So let's take a look at the flies that I have in my boxes, and I've got two boxes. One, I carry just a couple of dark flies that are sort of generic, you know, just big, dark, bushy flies, and I tend to enjoy and like a lot of flies that have more movement to them. They're more impressionistic flies than realistic flies. I think the movement of a fly, the fact that it looks alive, is more important, especially in salt water. I also, you probably can't see it from here, but I tie a lot of my flies with a weed guard on them because I throw them into mangroves and over oyster bars. And I want to be able to preserve my fly and not have to go grab it. So I tie a couple of those. Then what I have is I've cut a couple of big old, this is a favorite pattern of mine. It's got a huge head on it. It pushes a huge amount of water. It wiggles really good. And it's got a spun deer head hair that's been trimmed. So I have a couple of those in different colors, gray, brown, tan, and white. And then I've got some normal, these are normal patterns that are bait fish patterns. You know, just the normal old typical bait fish pattern. And I have quite a few of those in my box, mostly olive and white, but I've got a few that are other colors. And then I've got some poppers and gurglers. So you always carry poppers and gurglers because you never know when you might be able to get some surface action early in the morning here. We can get surface hits on snook, especially in trout. Our redfish don't hit gurglers and poppers real often, but the snook and the trout certainly do. So I always carry a couple of those in a few different sizes and colors. And then I've got some bait fish patterns that are smaller, more realistic patterns that are just mostly the smaller stuff. I use this a lot in the spring when the bait fish tend to be smaller. And so I've got quite a few of those little patterns. So that's one box, mostly with bait fish kinds of patterns. And then in the other box, I've got mostly crabs and shrimp and a couple other, for instance, I always carry a bunch of glass minnows and I use DNA material. With my glass minnows. Some are heavy, some are light, some are bead chain eyes, some are lead eyes, and they come anywhere from dark to light. This one here is particularly good depending on the time of the year. But anyway, these are smaller flies. They're most like our glass minnows that are just hatching, especially in the spring. You'll find a lot of even bigger fish eating glass minnows. This is just another bait fish pattern that I use quite frequently. It's got raccoon fur in the back. And a couple of hackles just to give it some motion. And I really believe in big eyes on a lot of my patterns. Then I use, this is typical, I hardly ever use these, but I do occasionally, just silver gold spoons. And then I've got a bunch of these things here are just crab patterns. And you can see most of my crab patterns are brown to olive. And basically the way I tie them again, I tie pretty big claws on them that are made out of this just hackle material, and then I use fox, you know, rabbit, squirrel, different kinds of things for the hackle around the hook shank. And then I've got some shrimp patterns, and again, these are just ones I happen to have right now. They're just tannish shrimp patterns. Again, raccoon fur, and just this is more or less just a tan clouser, but it's made a lot fatter. So that's about it. This is all I have. So I take off. These are the only two fly boxes that I use when I'm fishing. So I have that. I pretty much believe that if I can't catch a fish on these flies, it's not going to happen. Oftentimes I'll even go with just one of these boxes. In the winter, oftentimes I won't even take this box with me. That's why I have two. In the winter, the only bait fish patterns I'm going to use are smaller ones like the clousers. And then the rest of it's all shrimp and crabs. So now we're getting into March. When I'm making this, I'll start bringing my bigger box. But January and February, it's just going to be one box. So the only thing I really carry with me is my little chest pack. And I've seen a lot of people that I know just have a little butt pack, a little fanny pack. It's all you need. So this is all I have with me other than my rod and my reel and sometimes a stripping basket. Really, that's just about it. So I may carry an extra if I want to. I might think I might need it. And we'll talk about that in a little while. I may carry an extra reel, but this is primarily what I have. So I wear a nice shirt with two big pockets in it in case I want to carry an extra fly box, and then I have a camera with a phone on it, or a phone with a camera on it. And then in here, all I have is one fly box that we just talked about for the winter, for instance. There's my one fly box for the winter. And then I just have a little stuff here. I put my flies on there, and if as soon as they get wet, well, I tell you, the second I get home, I take them out, rinse them in good cold water, and put them back after they dried. Then in this pocket, all I've got is in one pocket here, I've got my tippets. So I use fluorocarbon tippet for the most part when I'm fishing the flats. And I've got 8-pound, 12-pound, 16-pound, and 20-pound tippet, which pretty much covers all of the fish that I might encounter. If I think I might get into some bigger snook, I might bring 30 or 40-pound fluorocarbon, just because of it doesn't fray as easy when the snook runs and it gets its scale on the side of that. It can break it off. But this is pretty much all I need in terms of tippets. So I bring those tippets, and you may not even need to bring the 20-pound, although you can start rebuilding a little leader if you cut it back too far. Then I bring a leader, and I have a file to file my hooks. That's super important. You're going to catch more fish if you're filing your hooks, I think, for sure. Also down in that little pocket, I've got a thermometer, because if I get out there and I know that yesterday or last week I got out there and the water temperature was 68 and today it's 61, you know, I might as well just pack up and go back home again. And also there's some apps that'll tell you what the water temperature is, but I carry a thermometer. The other thing I carry is just a little pocket knife with some scissors and a couple of knives on it, and of course a nail knot tool in case I have to put on another leader for whatever reason. So that's all there is in that pocket. And then what I have on the outside, I have a fish hook remover that I find pretty easy to do if I've got fish that I don't want to get near them. Every once in a while we've got a catfish, puffer fish, some other stuff that I don't want to be near their dorsal fins. So I use this. I've also got a pair of pliers for removing hooks, smashing hook barbs, whatever. You never can have a pair of pliers that this is always something you want to have. And the last thing I have is some clippers. So I have a big pair of clippers that I can file to keep them sharp without having to buy new clippers or screw around with sending in blades again. In any case, that's it. That's all I have. That is all my stuff that I take. And so that's it. What you see right here, I'll move this over so you can kind of see it better, minus the coffee cup, of course. That's it. That's what I take with me fishing. And other than that, I'm free, and it's pretty nice. Get home, just rinse it all really good, and have some fun. So let's talk about the big stuff that you need to have. I usually bring a 7 or an 8 weight rod, but that's perfectly negotiable. You could even bring a 6 weight. Sometimes I might even bring a 6 weight, but normally it's a 7 weight and sometimes an 8 if I'm thinking I'm going to cast bigger flies, longer distances, and there's wind. The other thing I usually have with me, at least in a car, is a sink tip, intermediate sink tip line that I can get if I'm going to have to throw into a deeper trough or a drop off and I want to get my fly a little bit lower, or if I want to fish a flat where I'm fishing bait fish in 2 or 3 feet of water and I want to maintain a flat trajectory on that bait fish instead of having it dip up and down like it will if it's on a sinking or floating line. If I have a intermediate line, it'll just keep that fly moving a little bit more normally. So I might have those 2 fly lines. The other thing that I'll probably bring is usually I'm bringing a stripping basket, and it's certainly not a necessity. I know a lot of people that don't. I just find a stripping basket is so much easier rather than having to worry about carrying loops, worrying about the line dragging behind you, worrying about, how you hold the loops. I can do that, and I've got a video on how to do that. And certainly if I've forgotten my strip basket or the person I'm going to go fishing with doesn't have one and are having trouble, I can fish without one, but I just think it's easier, and if you get used to it, it's pretty simple to use. So a stripping basket can be good. I like to wear a shirt with some pockets in it so I can stick extra fly boxes, my phone, something like that in my pocket so I don't have to carry anything more than my pack with me. Hat, I like a big broad brim hat with a black bottom on it. It's amazing how much the inside of the brim, this hat here for instance, the inside of that brim is black. And I'm telling you, that black hat makes a huge difference in terms of the glare, because it absorbs the light instead of bouncing the light off onto your face. So try that. I wear good sunglasses, always have good sunglasses, have good, usually I wear a belt so I can put my pliers on the belt if I want to. I also, the thing I do a lot here in Tampa Bay is I wear waders, just because I've heard some horror stories about infections people get from little cuts on their bodies. So again, that depends on where you're going. I certainly would rather wade wet, but the older I get, the less often I'm wading wet and the more often I'm wearing waders, just because of other considerations like scratches and cuts and that kind of thing. So those are basically what I'm going to wear. Boots, if I'm wading in the flats, you know, a lot of people wear neoprene boots. When I got whacked by that stingray, I was wearing neoprene boots, and the tail went through the neoprene boot on the top, and I was shuffling, but it was in a muddy area. I really couldn't see the bottom. I was shuffling, and I guess there was tons and tons of these rays. They weren't very big. They were about this big. But he went through the top of my neoprene boot, went into the top of my foot, and of course he couldn't get his barbs out because the neoprene had trapped the barbs. So he just sat there and wiggled around, flopping against my leg while his tail drilled holes into his spines into my top of my foot. So for now I wear a much harder top on my boots. I don't wear neoprene boots anymore unless the water's super clear and I can see really well. But a lot of our water, we're walking through kinds of mud, or we've got a lot of fish that are disturbing it. You know, you got mullet that are swimming around, schools of hundreds of mullet, your water's going to be kind of dirty. So I'm wearing boots from now on, and mostly waders, but that certainly is something you can you can consider as an option. One last thing I found for the sun, because obviously sunscreen is going to be really important, and if you're near mangroves, you may want to consider insect repellent, because if the wind's blowing from you into the mangroves, you can get no-see-ums and mosquitoes and all kinds of stuff to come out and bite you. I have a balaclava system that I use when the wind's blowing really bad. If the wind's not blowing bad, I just wear my big broad-brimmed hat because I think it protects the back of my neck and my eyes better. And it's more comfortable than having to wear this. But this is a balaclava, which I oftentimes wear. And the reason I wear it is because it keeps my hat on in a bad wind and it still protects my face. So this is the kind of thing I use. You just put it over the top of you, and now it's going to keep your hat from blowing off, especially like if you're you're in a flats boat and you're flying across the flats. This is going to keep it off, and man, there's no sun exposure to your skin. So this is something I use quite a bit when I'm wade fishing. I don't like them when it's super hot, but it's better than getting burned, and it's certainly better than having my hat blow off all the time. So you might consider a balaclava like this. So in conclusion, I would just say that, you know, what I've demonstrated and explained is for my particular kinds of fishing here, but I'm pretty much the same system if I'm in the Bahamas or surf fishing in California. They're still pretty much the same kind of thing, doesn't matter where you're fishing, but there are subtle differences, and those differences are going to determine the difference between success and failure sometimes. So the biggest thing I can possibly advise everybody that's going to go wading some flats is find out as much about that flat as you can beforehand from experts who know your area.